Hello and welcome to this video. My name's Siobhan, and in this video we're going to be building upon our ongoing live coding project again. So just like with our ongoing live coding project parts 1 and 2, we're going to need to work with those files. So make sure you've done both of those videos before you have a go at this live coding exercise. We're going to be making a copy of our ongoing live coding project 2 that we can work on. We want to keep that one and we're going to build on it this time. So I'm going to right click here in my folder and I'm going to choose make a copy. We'll give it a moment to make that copy. Obviously it's being slow because I'm recording a video. There we go. So then I'm going to right click and choose rename and just change it. So instead of saying copy of, it just says ongoing live coding project and I change the number to 3. Perfect. So that's the file we're going to be working in for this project. So what we're going to do in this one is bring in those loops and ifs. So instead of just clicking on a row of data and it makes a document for it, it's going to loop down the list and make a document for each row of data in turn. So a bit more useful, a bit more automated. So I'm going to double click to open my project. Just a note that we do still need the template and the folder. So if I jump back in here quickly again to that template file and that folder, we're still going to be using those. If I go into this document, you can see it's copied it, including the new doc URL for when I made a previous one. So what I'm just going to go is click into this cell and delete that URL because we want a new space. And I also need to give it a bit more data. So I'm going to add in some more names and shoe sizes. I'm going to add in a name and a shoe size, and maybe I could do a third one as well. So I will pick another one with shoe size there. So just make sure you've got multiple rows of data with a name and a shoe size. Doesn't matter what you put there. I've put a couple of things, but you can put anything you like and leave that new doc URL column empty. The other thing we could go and do, this is optional, is we can go back into our live coding project 2 folder and we can delete. So I can right click and choose move to bin, the file we previously made, and you might have multiple files in here. If you ran your live coding code multiple times, that's fine. Just delete all of those so the folder's empty. That just means that we know it's worked because we'll get the new documents. Otherwise, Google will just make them with the same name in that folder, which is typically not what you want. So once we've done that, we're ready to start with our app script. So I'm going to go up to extensions app script to open the app script project. As so. Now this has got the previous code in from last time, but the name of it's wrong. So I'm going to click there and I'm going to go to the end and I'm just going to change it to 3 and click rename. Just so I know where I am, I'm not worried that I'm actually working in the copy by accident. So if you can remember from the ongoing live coding project 2, we have 2 functions. We've got get row data, and that's our main function. And that one is the one that is going to get the row data, work out what the data is, and then it's going to call another function called copy file, which is going to make a new file for us. And then it is going to come back and paste the URL of our new file into our spreadsheet. And then we have copy file, which gets a template file and a folder, makes it a file name, and it copies it and replaces some text. We're not going to be changing copy file at all. That's going to do exactly the same thing, just within our loop. So I'm going to go back into get row data, and there's a few things that I need to start tweaking in order to do this. So I'm fine with the first 2 lines here. That's all good. We actually no longer need to get the active row because we're not going to be working with it. The project 2, I had to click on a row and that was what it worked with. So I needed to know the active row. In this case, I don't, because we're not going to be doing that. So I'm going to get those 2 lines here where I get the active row and I've got a comment about it. I'm just going to delete them. Just tidy that up like so, because I no longer need that in my data. The other thing I'm going to do is tweak how we get our range. So currently we've been doing it by numbers. We've been giving it a position, some coordinates of how to get our range. But there is a different command that makes it easier for us when we've got a long list of data and we don't want to have to do that. And that means we can use get data range instead of get range. So where I've got this get range and something inside the brackets, I'm going to change that into a get data range. So I'm just going to highlight all there, delete that bit, and choose get data range. Has to have some open and closed brackets, but I don't need to put anything inside them, like so. So that was in creating my variable row data. I've just changed it from a get range to a get data range. That means it will get all of the cells it thinks it has data in, a bit like a spreadsheet can do when you use certain commands in a spreadsheet. So I'm just going to work out where my data is. And I've used get values. Now, because we're using get values now, and we've got multiple lines of data, I can also get rid of that 0 at the end, because we don't just want the first array at index 0, we want all of the arrays. So we get rid of that. It just would say get values, open, close round brackets, and then a semicolon, nothing else. So those are the little bits that you can do. The other thing I'm going to do is just change the name of the variable, because it's no longer the data for a single row, it's the data for lots of rows. So I'm just going to change that to say data, and then I'm going to change my logger just so it also logs the data. And I'm going to update my comment just so it says get the data as well, because that will help me know what's going on. So that's just the sort of bit of setting up I need to do. I'm going to hit save now just to make sure I've got that far. Lovely. Now it's time to get interesting. Let's make ourselves a loop so we can loop down each row of the data and make an individual document for each one. So what I'm going to do, just going to ignore those bottom 2 lines for now, because we are going to use those, but not yet. So I'm going to go to the end of where I've logged my new variable data with a slightly changed name, and I'm going to hit enter a couple of times like so, and I'm going to create a new comment with 2 forward slashes that says loop through data array. So I know what I'm going to do. I'm going to make a loop. It's going to go through the data array. So then I'm going to hit enter, and I'm going to create my loop. So it's going to be a for loop like we've learnt about. So I'm going to write for space. And then I'm going to do some brackets so I can give it those 3 bits of information to define my for loop. So we're going to create our counting variable. We're going to define how far our counting variable should go and how it should increment. So first of all, I'm going to write var I equals 1. The reason 1 is because we have an array of data, so our counting starts from 0, but we also have a header row in our spreadsheet. So we don't want to start with the header row. I don't want a document for the word name and the word shoe size. I just want a document for the actual data. So I'm starting my counting from 1. And then I'm going to do a semicolon, and then I can give it the next piece of data. I'm going to do a little space, just make it easy to read, and I'm going to write I is less than data dot length. So you can see the autocorrect actually also suggest is actually suggesting this here. Data.length. Length is something I can do with an array, and it will return, as you can see written in the little hint, a number. So it's going to give me a number which is the length of my array data. And basically I only want my loop to run for the length of the array, so that's perfect. So I'm going to end that with a semicolon. And finally, I'm going to do another space, and I'm going to do I++, like so. So that allows us to increment the value of I 1 by 1 each time. So we go down each row in turn. We're not skipping rows or something. We're just doing 1 at a time. Now I need to make sure I'm back outside of my round brackets, and I'm going to do one of my curly braces. And it's automatically put another one at the end, which is kind of it. So I'm going to hit enter. And all inside here is all the code that's going to be inside my loop then. I'm going to hit enter, just leave a little space. I'm going to do 2 forward slashes to write a comment. And the next thing I want to do, now I'm inside the loop, so whatever happens in here is repeated for each row of data. I want to get the row of data. So I'm going to write get row data as a 1D array. So I'm just reminding myself what kind of information is going to be in row data as well. So when I come back to this project, if I'm going to go and tweak it in the future or just run it and see what's happening or it breaks, I know I'm looking for a 1-dimensional array from this variable. Just a helpful hint for me, really. So I'm going to hit enter, and I'm going to write var row, capital D for data, another space, and then I'm going to do space equal sign space, data, square brackets, I, and then end the line with a semicolon. Because what I'm doing is I'm saying, okay, we've got a whole 2-dimensional array data, which is everything in the spreadsheet. I just want each individual array. So it's going to use the counting variable. So each time the loop runs, it's going to be a different row, because it's going to be a different position in our array. So that's where our counting variable inside a loop is so useful when we're working a spreadsheet, because we can use it like this. Okay, so we've got that. The other thing we want to do is we're going to have a little bit of an if. We're going to check something. We're going to check if there's already anything in the URL cell, because otherwise AppScript is very good at basically just saying, okay, I'll make another document. And you've already got one, and then you end up with 5 of the same document. The link's only to the last one. It's going to overwrite the link each time. We don't want that. We only want to make a document if we don't already have one. So the other thing I'm going to do is make sure I've got that cell, the information in that cell there, stored in a variable so that I can check it easily when I do an if. I could do this all within my if condition, but I'm going to separate it out so it's nice and easy. I can see what's going on. So I'm going to hit enter and enter again, do 2 forward slashes for a comment, and I'm going to write get the cell with the URL to check if there's already one. You can write whatever makes sense to you. To me, I like to be a bit wordy in comments so I fully know what's going on. Then I'm going to hit enter, and I'm going to do another variable. So var space, I'm just going to call it URL cell with a capital C. I've gone for lowercase for my whole URL. And then I'm going to do a space equals sign. So now we're working with row data. So it's a 1-dimensional array. So I'm going to write what row data square brackets. Okay, so what position in my data is this going to be? Let's go and have a look. So I've got 1, 2, 3, but that's not the position, is it? So this is position 0, this is position 1, this is position 2. So we're looking for index number 2 for this bit here. Bear in mind, the only reason we've got this column actually included in our get data range is because it has a header row. If it didn't have a header row, it wouldn't actually be included in our range because there's not any data in it. So header rows are useful for that. I mean, it tells it we're expecting there could be some data in here. Anyway, so I'm going to put a number 2 inside my square brackets back in the AppScript editor and finish the line with a semicolon again. Fantastic. So now we've got all the information we need ready to do our if condition. So then we can do if, and then that's when we're going to run copy file inside our if. So only if there's nothing in that URL cell do we want to make a document and put its URL in. I think that makes sense, doesn't it, logically? Let's have a go. So I'm going to hit enter and enter again. Do 2 forward slashes for a comment, and I'm going to write check whether, in fact, I'm going to write check if doc needs creating. Perfect. Then I'm going to hit enter, and I'm going to create my if condition. So I'm going to write if space, put some round brackets, and then I'm going to write URL cell, making sure it's exactly the same as the name as my variable URL cell. You can copy and paste if it's easier. And then I'm going to do a space, and I want to do equals to blank. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do equals sign, because if you remember, we have to do 2 equal signs to mean equals 2, space, and then I'm going to do a single quote, and there's another single quote at the end because it automatically completes it, and put nothing in the middle, because that means it's blank. So we're saying if the URL says blank, we're going to do this code. I need to make sure I'm back up after my round brackets at the end of the line, and I'm going to do my curly braces and hit enter. So anything that happens in here now is inside that if, so it only happens if it's true. Okay, so what I'm going to do now, because I need to actually grab these 2 lines, is I'm going to copy and paste them over there. Actually, I'm going to cut and paste them because that means I'll get rid of it in one go. So I'm going to use, you can use either Control X on a Windows computer or Command X on a Mac. It looks like it disappeared, but I also copied to the clipboard because it's a cut. Then I'm going to hit myself, make sure I'm inside my if condition, inside those curly braces there. I'm going to hit enter a couple of times, and then I'm going to use Command or Control V to paste. You might see it's done like me and it's not pasted quite nicely. I can use the tab key to sort of make it match up if I need to. Like so. So there we go. We've got our bit where we call the function, it sends row data over there, and it's going to bring us back a new document URL. Now I also want the bit where it's going to paste in my new document URL. So I'm going to do the same process. I'm going to highlight, I'm going to use Control or Command X. I'm going to hit enter, Control or Command V, and just tidy up that little bit there as well. Lovely. So now we're not quite ready there, because I've pasted this bit in, and it's going to put that new URL into my column, just like before. However, we were using row number to find out what row we were in. We can't do that anymore because we don't have row number. We're inside a loop. So I need to get rid of row number, like so, in my range, and I need to give it, well, it's a position relative to where we are in our loops. We've got I is our counting variable. And if you remember, I stands for the position in the array we're in. So we're going to be working with I, but we're not talking about the array, we're talking about the spreadsheet. So whilst our array counts from 0, the spreadsheet counts from 1. So what we need to do is just do I plus 1. So sometimes you will find when you're working with arrays in a spreadsheet that you're great until you come back to write the data into the spreadsheet or do something on the spreadsheet cells, and then you need to adjust I by 1 when you're inside that loop so it still works. So we've changed it now, so we've got sheet.getRange, I plus 1, comma 3. So that is everything that happens inside our if. It does the same 2 lines of calling copy file, which is our other function, sending it row data, and then we get a URL back and we're writing it in. We've just had to tweak exactly how we give it the location. Now we could stop there and that would be fine, that this would all work, but I'd like to make my code a little bit better by adding an else that will log the fact we're not making a document as well. So here's where we need to have a little look at our curly braces. You see I've currently got 3 sets of curly braces, and they're all actually different colors to show me they're different ones. I'm just going to tidy this up a little bit by getting rid of some of these blank lines. Just going to hit backspace a few times to tidy them up. So I can see I've got 3 sets. So I've got 1 set that's for my if condition, 1 set that's for my for loop, and 1 set that's for the function overall. So making sure that I'm at the end of the line of the ones that are for my if condition. In my case, they seem to be highlighted a kind of brown color. And then I'm just going to write else, and then do some more brackets. Some more curly braces, not brackets. It's easy to get confused between your brackets. So more curly braces. So this is giving me some code that will run if it's false, the else condition. And I'm just going to write logger.log as we have, open brackets, do some quotes, just going to write document already made for row. I could be clever and put it in so it tells you what number row we're talking about, but I'm not worried about that too much. Just going to finish my line with a semicolon like so, and that should all work fine. Hit save. Double check you've got all the brackets closed like this. We should have 3 lovely sets of curly braces closed. Just keep an eye on that. When you hit save, you might get errors if you haven't. So just check that, make sure they're all looking correct. And then we're ready to run it. Unlike before, it doesn't matter where we're clicked in the document because we're not using the active row. Make sure you're in function get row data because we have to run this one. Running copy file won't work. And then we hit run. And it's going to have an authorization prompt as we've seen before. I'm going to authorize it and say that it's allowed to do all the things because I've written this code. I know it's safe. And then I'm going to start seeing some information. So you can see, first of all, it's logged my array of data that's coming up like so, which is just what I'm expecting. And then it's just taking a little while. It does take a bit of time to create documents. And so if you are, like this one does, making multiple documents at once, you might find there is a bit of a lag in finishing your code. So do bear that in mind. It can take a little while. So you might want to do it in chunks or thinking about this. So it says it's done. We have no proof in here that it's completed. But if I click over to the spreadsheet, I can see 3 URLs. If I click on one of them, I can open it and check that it's replaced the text. So there we have it. It's replaced the text. Lovely. If I go into my folder for Live Coding Project 2, it's still got that name, but we know it's this one. I can see all 3 documents have been created and they've got different names. So they've actually gone through each row correctly. I could go and open another one to check. There we go. It's worked. As before, if yours doesn't work, take a look and compare the code. This one is a bit fiddly because it does require tweaking existing bits of code and changing ways of getting data. So do look carefully through this or look through the support document to help you if you need to. Thanks for watching.